Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth just wrapped up what is likely the most disastrous and awful speech in front of military generals and admirals in United States history. I'm not exaggerating. I'm just going to show you the receipts. You can see right there the military generals and admirals who are in the room who were forced to leave the bases where they were stationed across the world to listen to Donald Trump say that San Francisco, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, they're the new war zones. It's a war from within. A major part of your mission is going to be invading these cities. This is what he says. Here, listen for yourself. Play this clip.
And this is going to be a major part for some of the people in this room. That's a war too. It's a war from within. Controlling the physical territory of our border is essential to national security. We can't let these people in. You know, we had no people enter in the last 4 months. Zero. Even I can't believe that. You know, we had millions coming in, pouring in. 25 million all told. And of those 25 million, many of them should never be in our country. They would take their worst people and their people.
Then Donald Trump starts talking about how he doesn't like the way modern battleships look. He really liked the way solid steel battleships looked. Here, play this clip.
We should maybe start thinking about battleships, by the way. You know, we have a Secretary of the Navy. He came to me because I look at the Iowa out in California, and I look at different ships and the old pictures. I used to watch Victory at Sea. I love Victory at Sea. Look at these admirals. It's got to be your all-time in black and white. And I look at those ships. They came with the destroyers alongside of them, and man, nothing was going to stop. They were 20 deep, and they were in a straight line, and there was nothing going to stop them. And we actually talk about, you know, those ships. Some people would say, no, that's old technology. I don't know. I don't think it's old technology when you look at those guns. But it's something we're actually considering, the concept of battleship. Nice 6-inch side, solid steel, not aluminum. Aluminum that melts if it looks at a missile coming at it. Starts melting as the missile's about 2 miles away. You know, those ships, they don't make them that way anymore. But you look at it, and your secretary likes it, and I'm sort of open to it. And bullets are a lot less expensive than missiles. A lot of reasons. I should take a vote, but I'm afraid to take that vote because I may get voted out on that one. But I tell you, it's something we're seriously considering. There were powers. There were big powers. They were just about as mean and scary as you could be. So we're looking at that.
Then Donald Trump starts talking about the N-word, which he says is nuclear. Then he goes on to say there are different N-words out there. You're going to play this clip.
That'd be so horrendous. But I announced that, you know, based on his mention of nuclear, and it was really a stupid person that works for him mentioned the word nuclear, I moved a submarine or two, I won't say about the two, over to the coast of Russia, just to be careful, because we can't let people throw around that word. I call it the N-word. There are two N-words, and you can't use either of them. You can't use either of them. And frankly, if it does get to use, we have more than anybody else. We have better, we have newer, but it's something we don't ever want to even have to think about. But when somebody mentions it, that submarine started immediately thereafter. And it's just lurking, but I'm sure we're not going to have to use it. But it's.
Then Donald Trump says that the American military went too woke after World War II and thus was not winning wars after World War II because it was too woke. Here, play this clip.
You can't. I don't want to go on after that. Now, he gave a great speech, but he talked about Department of War. We were sitting there. I said, didn't it used to be called the Department of War? And he goes, yes, sir. They changed it like in the early 50s. So we won the First World War, we won the Second World War, we won everything in between and everything before that. We only won. And then we went, in a way, woke. That was probably the first sign of wokeness. And we changed it to defense instead of war. And I said, what do you think? How do you think if we changed it back? Would that be a nice idea? And Pete loved it immediately. Some people thought about it. You know, they gave it a little thought.
Next, Donald Trump starts talking about how a big part of what these military generals and admirals will be doing is invading cities. Inner cities will be a big part of the war. He says he then makes up some bizarre story about firefighters getting shot out as they're putting out fires. Here, play this clip.
I always put the fire department in because they're great. They're great. And I got 95% of their vote, too. That helps. When you get 95% of their vote, you always have to mention them. But they're great. And they're brave in our inner cities, which we're going to be talking about, because it's a big part of war now. It's a big part of war. But the firemen go up in ladders and you have people shooting at them while they're up in ladders. I don't even know if anybody heard of that. And I said, don't talk about it much, but I think you have to. Our firemen are incredible. They're up in one of these ladders that goes way up to the sky, rescuing people, and you have animals shooting at them, shooting bullets at firemen that are way up in death territory. You fall off that ladder, it's over. It's over. They don't even have to inspect you.
Then Donald Trump attacks Democrats in front of our military generals and admirals and says the Democrats don't respect you. Again, I can't emphasize enough how un-American this is. Let's play it.
Administration. They did not treat you with respect. The Democrats, they never do. Not only are we rebuilding our great strength, but...
Then he starts to spell the word lore, L-O-R-E, he says. Here, play this clip.
Military legends and lore. That's L-O-R-E. It is lore. When it comes to defending our way of life, nothing will slow us.
Then Donald Trump goes back to speaking about the battleships and says, because he's a very aesthetic person, he doesn't like the way the stealth battleships look like. So we should go back to the big steel battleships from the 20th century, well, the early 20th century, 18th, 19th century. Here, play this clip.
You know, in the Second World War, they were freighters and different types, but we were doing a ship a day. And now we don't do ships. And I'm not a fan of some of the ships you do. I'm a very aesthetic person, and I don't like some of the ships you're doing aesthetically. They say, oh, it's stealth. I said, that's not stealth. An ugly ship is not necessary in order to say you're stealth. By the way, the B-2 bombers were incredible. That is stealth. They went into that.
Then Donald Trump says one of the biggest fights he ever had to deal with is calling the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. He goes, huge fight, big fight. Here, let's play it.
There's been no fight. There's been no fight. Like what I called the Gulf of America, the Gulf of America, because to me it was always the Gulf of America. I could never understand. We have 92% of the frontage. And for years, actually 350 years, they were there before us. It was called the Gulf of Mexico. I just had this idea. I'm looking at a map. I'm saying, we have most of the frontage. Why is it Gulf of Mexico? Why isn't it the Gulf of America? And I made the change, and it went smoothly. I mean, we had a couple of fake news outlets that refused to make the change. And then one of them, AP, took us to court, and we won. And the judge, who was a somewhat liberal judge, said the name is the Gulf of America, because AP refused to call it the Gulf of America. They wrote, they're not a good outfit, by the way. They call it the Gulf of Mexico. I said, no, the Gulf of America is the name. And the judge actually said that, in fact, you can't even go into the room because what you're doing is not appropriate. The name is the Gulf of America. Google Maps changed the name. Everybody did, but AP wouldn't. And then we won in court. How about that? Isn't that so cool?
Then Donald Trump says, look, everybody here needs to know how hot we are. We're so hot. We're the hottest country. He said, Vladimir Putin said how hot we are. When I met Putin in Alaska, he said, you're hot. Donald Trump speaking to our military generals and admirals and bragging that our enemy, Vladimir Putin, said that we are hot. Like, I can't emphasize enough how deranged and traitorous this is. And then Donald Trump's like, then Putin attacks Kyiv after, but it's one of those things, whatever, it's one of those things. He tells me we're hot, then he attacks Kyiv, whatever, one of those things. Here, play this clip.
You were a dead country, and now you're the hottest country anywhere in the world. We're the hottest country in the world right now. The absolute hottest country in the world. There's nobody even close. Putin said that to me. We met in Alaska, had a good meeting. Then he went back and started sending drones into Kiev. I said, I thought we had a good meeting. But it's one of those things. But we were a dead country a year ago, and now we're the hottest country anywhere in the world. Think of that. You can be proud of that.
Then Donald Trump starts attacking his, political opponents and says, people love the military when they invade their cities. And the only reason why people say they don't like the military invading their cities is they must be paid off by people like Soros. Here, play this clip.
And you know what the people say? The people in those cities where they're being raped and shot and beat up. You know what they say? We love the military. You ever see where they interview the people on the street? I've never seen somebody say they don't, unless they're radical and paid off, because a lot of these insurrectionists are paid by, whether it's Soros or other people, but they're paid by the radical left.
Then Donald Trump says that Portland looks like World War II. I hope you've been following the videos I've been doing on Portland, Oregon. You see, where you can see the farmers markets and the people in the park. I even showed you what was going on in front of the ice facilities where there's like only a few people there. And so no, it's not World War II, but this is what he says. Let's play it.
They're considering it a great week. They shouldn't lose any. You shouldn't lose any. This is civilization. And he's always up there saying, we're in very good shape. We don't need the military. No, they need the military desperately. How about Portland, Oregon, where it looks like a war zone? And I get a call from the liberal governor, sir, please don't come in. We don't need you. I said, well, unless they're playing false tapes, this looked like World War II. Your place is burning down. I mean, you must be kidding. Sir, we have it under control. I said, you don't have it under control, Governor, but I'll check it. And I'll call you back. I called her back. I said, this place is a nightmare. It's certainly not the biggest, but it's one of the worst. It's brutal. They go after our ICE people, who are great patriots and tough job too, but they love it. They love it because they're cleaning up our country.
Then Donald Trump says, I know that you generals have to deal with vicious people, but I deal with vicious people who write bad stories about me. Here, play it.
The vote that I got from the military, and they're vicious people, that we have to fight, just like you have to fight vicious people. Mine are a different kind of vicious. But they spread all these horrible, they made up statements and said what I said about everything, but even about the military. But fortunately, the military didn't believe it. It's hard. They make up a statement and they said, you say it. We had 25 people that said he never said that. 25. We had 25 affidavits. And they said, well, we're going with it anyway. These sleazebags. And that's why the press is really losing all power, because people aren't believing it. We need an honest press. We need borders. We need borders. We need an honest press. We need fair elections. I mean, those three things. And we don't have an honest press. We have a really corrupt press. But we fight through the corrupt press. And the people understand you have to do this stuff a lot. You have to go on television a lot because you can't get a fair shake if you're going to rely on somebody else. They don't understand. They've destroyed the image of media now is at the lowest point it's ever been. It's lower than Congress. Can you believe that? It's something.
Then Trump talks more about Canada becoming the 51st state and starts talking about stealing Canada's sovereignty. Here, play it.
We help other countries with it. We don't have it ourselves. And Canada called me a couple of weeks ago. They want to be part of it. To which I said, well, why don't you just join our country? You become 51, become the 51st state, and you get it for free. So I don't know if that made a big impact, but it does make a lot of sense. It actually makes, because they're having a hard time up there in Canada now, because as you know, with tariffs, everyone's coming into our country. We have more investment than we've ever had before, $17 trillion coming in. As an example, in 4 years, Biden didn't have $1 trillion. We have $17 trillion, more than that, in 8 months coming in. And they're coming in from Canada, Mexico, from Europe, from all over. AI, auto plants. Everybody's coming back to the United States.
Then Donald Trump says that he's brought in trillions of dollars. Yet another lie. Let's play it.
I'm okay with that. But they hit me hard. But it is. I mean, when you look at, we've taken in trillions of dollars. We're rich again. And there'll never be, when we finish this out, there'll never be any wealth like what we have. Other countries were taking advantage of us for years and years. You know that better than anybody. And now we're treating them fairly. But the money coming in is, we've never seen anything like it. The other day they had $31 billion that they found, $31 billion. So we found $31 billion and we're not sure from where it came. A gentleman came in, a financial guy. I said, well, what does that mean? He said, we don't know where it came. I said, check the tariff shelf. No, sir, the tariffs haven't started in that sector yet. I said, yes, they have. They started 7 weeks ago. Check it. Comes back 20 minutes later. Sir, you're right. It came from tariffs. $31 billion. That's enough to buy a lot of battleships, Admiral, to use an old term. I think we should maybe start thinking.
Then you have Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, who unlawfully refers to himself as the Secretary of War, says to everybody there, no beards, no long hair, no individual expression. We are not going to have a military full of Nordic pagans. As Senator Ruben Gallego, also veteran, says, really, we flew in every general so they could hear Pete Hegseth hear this. Play this clip.
This also means grooming standards. No more beards, long hair, superficial individual expression. We're going to cut our hair, shave our beards, and adhere to standards. Because it's like the broken windows theory of policing. It's like when you let the small stuff go, the big stuff eventually goes. So you have to address the small stuff. This is on duty, in the field, and in the rear. If you want a beard, you can join Special Forces. If not, then shave. We don't have a military full of Nordic pagans, but unfortunately we have had leaders who either refuse to call BS and enforce standards, or leaders who felt like they were not allowed to enforce standards.
But then Hegseth starts saying that he doesn't want anybody to be fat in the military. He goes, I'm talking to the generals and admirals, everybody. Everybody has to be conditioned and pass physical training, and I don't want to see any fat generals or any fat admirals. And it's like looking at the crowd. If any of you are overweight, you're not allowed to be here. Here, play this clip.
It all starts with physical fitness and appearance. If the Secretary of War can do regular, hard PT, so can every member of our joint force. Frankly, it's tiring to look out at combat formations, or really any formation, and see fat troops. Likewise, it's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon and leading commands around the country and the world. It's a bad look. It is bad, and it's not who we are. So whether you're an airborne ranger or a chairborne ranger, a brand new private or a 4-star general, you need to meet the height and weight standards and pass your PT test. And as the chairman said, yes, there is no PT test. But today, at my direction, every member of the joint force at every rank is required to take a PT test twice a year, as well as meet height and weight requirements twice a year, every year of service. Also today, at my direction, every warrior across our joint force is required to do PT every duty day. Should be common sense. I mean, most units do that already, but we're codifying it. And we're not talking like hot yoga and stretching. Real hard PT, either as a unit or as an individual. At every level, from the Joint Chiefs to everyone in this room to the youngest private, leaders set the standard. And so many of you do this already. Active, Guard, and Reserve.
And again, this is the image, I guess, that Hegseth was trying to literally copy the famous General Patton speech right here. Again, just so utterly pathetic. Hegseth says that we're empowering drill sergeants to basically, discipline their troops by cursing and hitting them, putting their hands on them and physically attacking recruits. That's how they're going to discipline troops, he says. Here, play this clip.
We will not lose warfighters because we failed to train or equip them or resource them. Shame on us if we do. Train like your warriors' lives depend on it, because they do. To that point, basic training is being restored to what it should be: scary, tough, and disciplined. We're empowering drill sergeants to instill healthy fear in new recruits, ensuring that future warfighters are forged. Yes, they can shark attack, they can toss bunks, they can swear, and yes, they can put their hands on recruits. This does not mean they can be reckless or violate the law, but they can use tried and true methods to motivate new recruits, to make them the warriors they need to be. Back to basics at basic as well.
And then he goes on to say that they're going to reevaluate their hazing requirements or like the anti-hazing, and basically all of that will be okay. In other words, I think is what he's saying. You're play this clip.
Real toxic leadership is endangering subordinates with low standards. Real toxic leadership is promoting people based on immutable characteristics or quotas instead of based on merit. Real toxic leadership is promoting destructive ideologies that are an anathema to the Constitution and the laws of nature and nature's God, as Thomas Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence. The definition of toxic has been turned upside down, and we're correcting that. That's why today, at my direction, we're undertaking a full review of the department's definitions of so-called toxic leadership, bullying, and hazing, to empower leaders to enforce standards without fear of retribution or second guessing. Of course, you can't do like nasty bullying and hazing. We're talking about words like bullying and hazing and toxic. They've been weaponized and bastardized inside our formations, undercutting commanders and NCOs. No more. Setting, achieving, and maintaining high standards is what you all do. And if that makes me toxic, then so be it.
Well, there you have it, folks. Let me know what you think. That's I don't know how else to say it. It was probably the worst speech ever given in the history of the United States of America, and certainly the worst speech ever given in front of the military. It's anti-American, it's traitorous, it's everything our Constitution is against. It's right there for you to see. Hit subscribe.